The Lost Legion vanishes. The siege of Jigi, Carrhae, 53 BC. The year is 36 BC. A Han army, numbering 40,000 soldiers, crests the final ridge and gazes down upon the fortress of Jigi. What they behold confounds everything they know about warfare. Below them stands a formidable double defense system, an inner earthen wall typical of Central Asia, but surrounding it is something entirely foreign, a wooden palisade constructed from interlocking logs. This was not the design of any Shang warlord. As the gates creak open, 100 cavalry burst forth in a familiar nomadic display of force, but behind them something astonishing occurs. Another 100 infantry emerge, forming a cohesive and disciplined square. Their shields lock together, and they move as a single unit, executing precise military drills. Han General Chen Tang, who has journeyed 5,000 miles to reach this moment, is witnessing the legendary Roman testudo formation, the hallmark of the legions, holding a defensive position impossibly far from Italy. For 17 long years, the fate of these soldiers had been shrouded in mystery, until this remarkable fortress revealed the truth. This is the tale of 10,000 lost Romans, a rogue general, and the battle that unraveled a 17-year-old enigma. The catastrophe at Carrhae and the ensuing Eastern exile, the Carrhae catastrophe 17 years earlier. In 53 BC, Marcus Licinius Crassus led 7 Roman legions into the arid desert near Carrhae, boasting a force of over 40,000 elite soldiers. This expedition would become one of the most devastating defeats in Roman history. Crassus was not fighting for the Republic. This venture was rooted in personal ambition, a quest to secure military glory comparable to that of his fellow triumvirs, Pompey and Caesar. Facing him was the Parthian general Serena, commanding a mere 10,000 cavalry, 9,000 horse archers, and 1,000 heavily armored cataphracts. The arithmetic seemed overwhelmingly in favor of Rome, outnumbering the Parthians by a margin of 4-1. Yet mathematics could not account for tactics. The Parthians unleashed their signature maneuver, the Parthian shot. Wave after wave of arrows darkened the sky as they rained down upon the Romans. The Roman formations, designed for close-quarter combat, could not reach their tormentors. Every time the legions attempted to advance, the Parthian cavalry simply retreated, firing their arrows backward with deadly accuracy. The relentless onslaught persisted for hours under the blazing desert sun, while the Romans' water supplies dwindled. The auxiliary forces crumbled first, and panic soon cascaded through the legions. When the Romans were finally exhausted, the cataphracts charged. The 1,000 heavy cavalry collided with 40,000 demoralized infantry, shattering the formations. The butcher's bill was staggering. 20,000 Romans perished in the sand, while 10,000 more fled westward. Bearing news of the disaster back to Rome, however, an entire legion's worth 10,000 soldiers was captured alive along with their sacred eagles. Crassus himself was killed during a parley, his head severed and sent to the Parthian king. In one fell swoop, Rome had lost one of its most powerful generals and an entire army. But what fate awaited those 10,000 prisoners? The silence of history remained silent. The Roman poet Horace later mocked them, suggesting that Crassus' soldiers remained alive, living shameful lives as husbands to barbarian wives and serving their father-in-law kings. The answer to their disappearance lay in Parthian strategy. These were not ordinary captives. They were trained Roman legionaries, the finest heavy infantry in the world. The Parthians faced a critical decision: execute these valuable military assets or put them to use. Executing 10,000 trained soldiers would be a monumental waste, yet keeping them close to Roman territory posed an insurmountable risk. These men were well versed in Roman tactics and weaknesses. They could defect at any moment. Thus, the Parthians made a calculated choice. According to Pliny the Elder, they relocated the Roman captives to the province of Margiana, within the ancient city of Merv. This was located on the eastern frontier, thousands of miles away from Roman lands, where the captured legionaries would oversee Central Asian trade routes. Merv was strategically positioned at the crossroads of the Iranian plateau, the Afghan mountains, and the northern steppes. It was an important location, but more crucially, it was isolated. No Roman force could reach that far east to rescue their lost soldiers. For 17 years, these Roman veterans served under Parthian masters. Their military skills were utilized in defending remote oases and protecting trade caravans. They married local women, fathered children, and gradually acclimated to life on the fringes of the known world. But empires evolve, borders shift, and in 36 BC, a desperate new warlord named Shichanu was fleeing westward after losing a civil war against his brother. He required soldiers, and the Parthians had trained Roman infantry available for hire. The stage was set for a collision between two great powers. The coming confrontation, Han versus Parthian cohesion. Meanwhile, 5,000 miles to the east, a different kind of desperation was stirring in the Han Empire's western frontier. Chen Tang, the newly appointed vice commander of the Protectorate of the Western regions, stood at a crossroads. Unlike celebrated Han generals like Ho Kubing or Lai Guangli, who hailed from influential aristocratic families, Chen Tang was from humble beginnings, so poor that he had once survived by borrowing money and begging from neighbors. His youth had been marked by shame as he faced public humiliation for his debts. Yet this poverty had honed his mind into a sharp blade. Chen Tang possessed extensive knowledge of military strategy and the politics of the frontier. He understood every trade route, every tribal alliance, and every vulnerability within the sprawling network of Central Asian kingdoms. Upon hearing news that Shichanu had fortified himself deep within Kanju territory, Chen Tang recognized an opportunity that his superiors had overlooked. This fortress was not merely another barbarian stronghold. It was a chance for advancement. Situated along the Talas River in present-day Kazakhstan, the fortress was over 3,000 kilometers away from the Han capital of Chang'an. The actual journey, however, would stretch to 5,000 kilometers, reminiscent of the grueling march undertaken by Roman legions, pushing far beyond even Alexander's conquests. Any force departing from Chang'an would face an almost insurmountable logistical challenge. First would come the Taklamakan Desert, known as the Sea of Death, where armies could wander for weeks between sparse oases. Following that would be the formidable Pamir Mountains, with peaks soaring above 4,000 meters, where altitude sickness and severe weather could claim more soldiers than enemy arrows. A previous Han campaign against the Dawn had seen tens of thousands reduced to mere thousands by the time they returned home. The western frontier had historically devoured entire armies. However, Chen Tang was not contemplating a march from Chang'an. He was thinking like a frontier commander. The Protectorate of the Western regions maintained its own garrison troops, seasoned veterans, adapted to the brutal conditions of the frontiers. Armed with advanced Han military technology, including full sets of lamellar armor, ring-pierced swords, and halberds, as well as the devastating Han crossbow, these were no ordinary soldiers. Military records indicated that one fully equipped Han soldier was worth roughly 10 nomadic warriors. Effectively, this was a special forces unit. A revolutionary strategy. Chen Tang's plan was innovative. Instead of waiting for reinforcements from the capital, a process that would take at least a year, he aimed to mobilize existing frontier garrisons. Under the authority of the Protectorate, he would conscript soldiers from the vassal states and allied kingdoms surrounding Han influence. The western regions housed 48 city-states and small kingdoms under Han control, whose leaders held official seals from the Han court, thus accepting direct imperial authority. Chen Tang could summon their armies. His superior, Protector General Gan Shu, deemed the plan brilliant but insisted on reporting it to the emperor and waiting for permission. A message to Chang'an and back would consume 6 months' time that would lead to the loss of this opportunity. Shichanu might flee, winter could render the mountain passes impassable, or the political landscape could shift. The only viable solution was treason. Chen Tang forged an imperial edict in the name of the emperor and began conscripting over 40,000 soldiers from across the western regions. When Ganshu discovered the scheme, Chen Tang confronted him with a sword in hand. "The arrow is already on the bowstring," he proclaimed. "The great army is about to march. Do you intend to stop them with your own strength alone?" It was the ultimate gamble. If Chen Tang succeeded, he would be hailed as a hero for defeating Rome's greatest enemy. If he failed, he would be labeled a traitor who led the empire into an unauthorized war. The army was mobilizing. 10,000 elite, Han soldiers and 30,000 auxiliaries from the western regions were preparing to march in two columns directly toward the fortress that was about to witness a legendary clash between military powers. The Battle of Jigi, Rome versus China. As the Han army advanced in two converging columns, they crossed the Pamirs from the north and south. The southern column traversed Daiwan territory, while the northern column marched through Wusun lands, crushing a small Kanju force along the way. Once the two columns reunited deep in Kanju territory, they presented an unstoppable force. Han commanders forbade any looting or hostile actions against local populations, which coupled with overwhelming military might encouraged many discontented Kanju nobles, irritated by Shichanu's brutality, to defect and provide valuable intelligence and supplies. Shichanu was stunned when scouts informed him of the Han invasion. His advisors urged immediate retreat, fearing that departing the fortress with a small group would expose him to potential ambush. Ultimately, he decided to stand his ground, banking on the hope that the distant Han army would deplete their supplies. To buy time, he offered to send his own son to Chang'an as a hostage, but Chen Tang could already taste victory. He replied coolly, "The Son of Heaven has heard that you are residing in this poor remote land and fears you are uncomfortable. He has sent us to welcome you and your family back." When the Han army finally arrived before Jiji's fortress, they were met with a double defense system that would unravel a 17-year-old mystery. The outer stockade, comprised of interlocking logs, showcased a construction technique entirely alien to nomadic traditions. Inside stood the classic Central Asian earthen wall, adorned with colorful banners fluttering from the battlements. Several hundred armored soldiers manned the walls. The Han army established camp 3 miles away by the Talas River, but the moment that truly turned the tides was yet to come. 100 Han cavalry rode out, executing a familiar nomadic show of force galloping back and forth to intimidate the enemy. Then, in a twist that defied all expectations of steppe warfare, another 100 infantry emerged from the gates and assembled in a distinct formation at both sides of the entrance. These were not scattered barbarian fighters. They moved with mechanical precision shields interlocking, executing disciplined pre-battle drills. This was the smoking gun. Nomads did not maintain heavy infantry or utilize tight formations. Most importantly, this kind of provocative, well-drilled display before battle was entirely alien to the nomadic way of warfare. Only Roman legionaries were trained for such tactical precision. The testudo formation had been adapted for defensive maneuvers after 17 years on the Parthian frontier. However, facing 40,000 Han soldiers, Roman discipline would be of little use against the firepower of the Han crossbows. Chen Tang commanded his crossbowmen to unleash a volley, prompting the infantry and cavalry to retreat into the fortress. Amidst the cacophony of war drums, the Han army launched an all-out assault from every direction. The Han garrison troops advanced behind massive shields, while crossbowmen rained bolts upon the defenders. The auxiliary forces filled the moat, blockading the gates. As arrows darkened the sky, the defenders on the earthen wall were swiftly neutralized. The Han forces stacked firewood and set the palisade ablaze. During the night, Shichanu desperately attempted a cavalry charge through the gates only to be annihilated by the waiting crossbow volleys. Shichanu himself, clad in armor, fought valiantly on the walls alongside his armed wives and concubines. An arrow struck him in the face, and many of his companions fell around him. By midnight, the outer wooden wall was completely engulfed in flames. A relief force of 10,000 Kanju cavalry arrived, delivering several futile charges against the Han. The armored light cavalry became easy targets for Han crossbows, and after suffering heavy casualties, they retreated. At dawn, the Han army executed its final assault. Soldiers surged over the earthen walls into vicious street fighting. Shichanu retreated to his palace, but Han soldiers pursued him into the fray. In the ensuing close-quarters combat, Shichanu was mortally wounded and beheaded, becoming the first and only Xiongnu supreme ruler to be killed in battle by the Han. The final count told a harrowing story. 1,518 Xiongnu soldiers were slain, and 145 captured alive. These survivors likely included the last Roman legionaries emerging 17 years after Carrhae. They were not just soldiers. They were the final remnants of Rome's once great military presence facing the Han Empire. Chen Tang's career fluctuated between glory and disgrace in the aftermath. The emperor awarded him a noble title, but Confucian officials condemned him for corruption and defiance. He was stripped of his rank and imprisoned, only to be reinstated when his military genius was once again called upon. His famous declaration echoed through history: "Let those who dare challenge the great Han be hunted down, no matter how far they run." The strategic lesson from this encounter remains pertinent today. Fixed positions can become death traps when confronted by superior mobility and firepower. Shi Chanu's fortress strategy, which abandoned nomadic advantages for static defense, sealed his fate against Chen Tang's revolutionary logistics. If you were commanding those final Roman survivors, would you maintain the testudo formation against overwhelming crossbow fire, or order a desperate cavalry breakout? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more tales of legendary clashes between empires.